Welcome to Healing Honeys, the podcast for girls with big dreams trying to balance it all. I'm Louise Rumble, serial entrepreneur, type A overachiever, healing girly, and holistic wellness coach who also once got called the Jesus of modern dating. But let's get one thing straight. My healing era has never been calm. I'm talking savage dating stories, 20 cigarettes a day, daddy issues, an anxious attachment style, and an autoimmune disorder too. Today, I've spent thousands of dollars on healing and therapy, and now I'm here to guide you, love you, and laugh with you as I share my favorite tips, tricks, and rituals that have saved me along the way. With new episodes every Wednesday, expect girl talk, psychology, and the nervous system, as well as love, sex, and dating, wellness, fitness, and a little bit of business and spirituality too. So get in, honey. We are balancing healing, hustling, and life, and the best is yet to come. And if you're looking for ad-free listening or my somatic healing subscription daily devotion, just head over to the show notes. Now, let's get into it. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Healing Honeys podcast. Today I'm here with Sasha Pallari. I have been panicking I'm going to get her name wrong because it's just the thing that I do at the beginning of every podcast. I freak out that my brain is going to malfunction and say their name wrong. But I have got Sasha Pallari here with me. I've been waiting to have this amazing woman on my podcast since I discovered her. In fact, I'm going to say I discovered you before the internet discovered you, because I remember finding you and being like, this girl is amazing, but I just knew you were going to fly at that point.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I remember you sending me a DM and I was like,
creep.
This girl's, no. I remember looking at your page and I was like, this girl's an absolute queen. What on earth? Because you sent me a really lovely message as well. Yeah, I remember. And we've just been like internet fans of each other ever since.
Yeah, we just met this morning and then we were like, it feels so weird to say that we're meeting because we feel like we know each other.
Yeah, I definitely do feel like I've met you before.
Oh, good.
But that is
love that.
Joy of the internet, isn't it?
I know, and hopefully it'll be the first time of many.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I first discovered you when you had started your Instagram and you started Filter Drop. So not necessarily what we're here to talk about today. And I'm really excited for what we're going to talk about today and excited to be able to share your story. But just tell us a tiny bit about Filter Drop before we get into that, because I think it's a big part of your journey. Am I right?
Yeah, definitely. It was what catapulted me into this being famous. Me having a platform, not famous, but me having a platform whereby I obviously now get to just talk about all of these different things and it be part of my job. So I'm forever grateful for it. And also fundamentally, it was my belief system, and that has just allowed me to have such incredible opportunities. But Filter Drop essentially is a campaign that I started by accident, purely out of talking online about the damage and how worried I am about the dependence that people have using filters. It started as just sort of me saying, I really think that this is bad. We don't see real skin. And I encourage people, if they felt confident enough, to share filter-free selfies. And that happened every day consecutively for 7 weeks. Then the BBC picked it up and it went global. And then during that time, I put in an investigation with the ASA, and then it changed the guidelines. So you can now no longer advertise cosmetics with filters because of the campaign, which is sick.
And I remember that there was a moment that it really challenged what I was doing online as well, because before that point, I was using filters like everyone else was. And it was so cool because now, having done so much work, I realized that in those moments when we're triggered, it really shows us like the truth of our shadow. And in those moments I was like, wow, why am I scared to drop this filter? And I think I partook in the challenge as well. So that was like, yeah, you were a part of my journey as well.
Oh, thank you. It's habit, isn't it? Like, society tells us we've got to look a certain way and the filter gives us instant gratification to do that. And there was never any blame with the campaign. The campaign wasn't like, you're a piece of shit for using filter. It was more like, I understand why you're using filter. Now let me make you aware of it and let's not use them.
Yeah, exactly.
Essentially.
I love that so much. And today we're here to talk about a different story and to share your story that you have been going on for, well, not even just the last few years, probably before that as well. And I found you recently again through your stylist article. Okay, so you had shared with stylist how you had got married and 8 months later, is that correct?
Yeah,
had decided to part ways with your partner. And when I read that again, I just was like, great woman, so truthful, so vulnerable. So many people need to hear that. And I always say that leaving is a process, not a moment.
Yeah, fuck me.
Yeah, it's a fucking process, right? And that's why I'm excited for people to listen to this today, because whether they are married, whether they are just in a relationship and they haven't tied the knot, it's a process. It's something that so many of us have gone through. And I want to go back to the beginning. How old were you when you met your partner?
Do you know why I've been so excited about this podcast?
Why?
Because when I listen to you talk about relationships and stuff like that, we have such a similar like understanding and we want to know about the same details.
Yeah.
So I knew, like, as soon as you just asked me that, I was like, I know that you're going to ask all the questions that I'm going to want to talk about.
Good.
So I met him when I was 22 and I left him when I was 31. So it was just nearly 10 years, shy of 10 years. And your 20s are like such transformative years. The woman I was when I was 22 was literally just a woman. And the woman I am now is like unrecognizable to the woman I was when I met him. So I think the timing and that block has such a huge part to play in the whole situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because we just evolve so much. Yeah. And I don't know, what were you like at 22? Because I was a fucking wreck. I was taking drugs. I was cheating on my boyfriend. I really was like in the darkest of my life probably at that point.
Yeah.
But you were in a better state at 22? Like, what did life look for you at that point?
It's so funny that you ask this because we actually covered it for the first time in my therapy session on Monday.
Love therapy.
I know,
therapy.
Literally the best thing ever. My therapist, honest to God, I wish I could pay her more than I already have to pay her, but she's just insane. And she's also really like protective of what I talk about outside of therapy. She was very strict about that in the beginning because she knows that like so much of my job is online. But I also have to find that fine balance because having seen how much sharing my story has made people feel over the last 18 months, there are things that I do want to share and I do want to talk about because I actually just don't think they're spoken about enough. I went to drama school when I was 18 and that's all I'd ever wanted to do. It was like beeline my whole career. And I actually dropped out a year later.
Interesting.
Yeah, for a few reasons, a lot of reasons. But I do think that one of those reasons was the timing. I think I was too young. My headspace wasn't in the right place. And I was in a relationship just as I left to go to drama school. And I was in that relationship for 2.5 years. It was my first like proper boyfriend.
So your girl likes relationships?
Yeah, I am a relationship girl again. And this is something that kind of came up on Monday. I was like, but why? Because I feel like the last 18 months I've had to do so much on my own. And it's not like I've gone out looking for these relationships, but they just have happened. So 2.5 years with this first boyfriend. And I met my husband 3 months after we separated. So 3 months after my first heartbreak. Now, I will be honest, I went on Tinder back when that started. I wanted to be a slut because I was such a sensible person.
Yeah.
And I'm like first child of my mum and dad's
eldest
relationship. Eldest daughter. Got a little, little brother. Yeah.
Me too.
And you're very sensible. You've got to do it by the rule book and everything is like, no, you can't do that. You can't be naughty. And I'm talking like, I remember the first time I went to a house party. Well, the first time I smelt weed at a house party when I was 16, I cried because the smell was so bad and rang my mum and asked her to pick me up.
Oh my God, I literally love you so much.
That literally summarises how sensible I was.
That is so sweet. I'd be like, where's the weed?
I was like, Mum, it stinks and I could smell it in my hair.
That is so sweet.
So when I
did she come and pick you up?
Yeah, she did. Yeah,
good. That's kind parenting.
I know, very kind parenting. So she picked me up. That's not even important to the story, but basically that kind of gives you an overview of how sensible I was. So that was my time then when I'd gone through this horrific first heartbreak that I was like, right, now we need to have fun. And I just met him and that didn't happen. It was very quick. He was a lot older.
How much older?
7 years.
Okay, so you were
apparently
20.
I also love a 7-year age gap.
That's okay. I think my partner right now has also a 7-year age gap. So
really?
I'm an age gap. My parents are also an 8-year age gap.
Really? That's so interesting.
I like an older man.
Yeah. So when I met him, I think, and I stand by this now, he was the first man of that kind to ever come into my life. He was sensible. He was calm. He had a great job. He was older. He had his life completely figured out. And the boyfriend I was with before that was complete contrast. He was probably like, considered more of a bad boy, loved going out, loved drinking. Found out when we broke up, he also loved drugs. So he was everything that I think I ever needed at that time. And I stand by that now. He was definitely that person for me. But I look back on it and I look at this 22-year-old version of me who was so lost and had gone through so much for, loads of different reasons. And he was the calm and the stable that I think I'd always wanted, especially throughout my childhood. And I think that's one of the reasons why we lasted so long together.
I want to pick up on the childhood point there because it's my favorite thing to talk about. I'm interested as to like how a father figure played a role in your life and how maybe the presence of that or like the absence of that or the inconsistency of that. And I don't know what you're going to tell me, so I'm excited to hear. potentially tied into this need for such a safe, stable, nurturing, and ultimately healing love?
Yeah. I love that question.
Do you?
Yeah,
I
do.
love that question.
I love that question. I think this is probably the first time that I've spoken about it in depth on a podcast. My dad's Greek Cypriot and my mum's English. So my dad's very fiery, Mediterranean, works incredibly hard, always has done. And my mum the same, but you know, they have different ways of showing emotion, I would say, growing up. And they separated when I was 11, but I don't think they should have ever been together.
Okay,
because it wasn't a happy marriage of my memory. So there was a lot of shouting, a lot of, you know, loud noise, I would say. And although my parents loved me beyond, you know, you could ever wish for your parents to love you, I now look back and I realize that they were just two human beings doing the best with what they had at the time, with what they could at the time. But my childhood and that environment definitely affected my life and the way that I am, the way that I respond to shouting or loud noise or confrontation or conflict, and definitely affected how I see men and that sort of setup.
How do you respond to conflict? Like, I'm just interested if you go towards it because it's what you were wired into that you're used to, or if you pull away from it because you hate it and it's really hurt you in the past.
Run towards it as fast as I can. Like,
you and me both, honey.
Yes, let's sit down, let's fix it.
Interesting. But like, let's sit down and let's fix it, not like, let's fucking go. You want to fucking go or fucking go?
No, can't do that.
Okay. So not you and me both, honey. That's just...
No, I'm really, really calm, like very calm in a conflict. But I'm very much like, we need to sit down and we need to sit down right now. And it's only, I know we will get to it, but it's only my boyfriend now who is a complete, needs to shut down and reassess and think about things, that having to deal with that dynamic has made me realize how important a bit of space can be, and a bit of, you know, like calm and time can help the situation. So yeah, I guess I've only actually been in therapy consistently for a year, and you know, you touch on little bits, don't you? And then you don't touch on it for 6 weeks. So it's coming up a lot more. But my relationship with my dad now is probably the best it's ever been. But growing up, it was quite a turbulent sort of up and down relationship. We always had this very strong love and affection and emotion, and we were very silly together, me and my dad. But in terms of communicating emotion, near on impossible. And I get that's quite common for a lot of men and fathers, especially of our sort of generation. You know, you don't talk about feelings back then. So it is changing and it is different now. But in comparison to the man that I'm with now, like raised on different galaxies.
Yeah, literally different galaxies.
Yeah.
So it makes so much sense that I think because I always say what you grew up in, you're either attracted to or you repel against. So it's interesting that the first relationship you went to was more towards that, like slightly chaotic. Yeah. And then you pulled towards the safe. I think I did exactly the same thing. Like my first 3 relationships were hectic AF. And then in the back end of my 20s, I started to really soften into the fact that, wow, actually this safe, stable man, like this is love.
Yeah. That's the one you're with now.
That's the one I'm with now. And also the one before. Yeah. The one before taught me that my emotions, he loved me more for them, not less. And I grew up in an environment where it wasn't even that my emotions were invalidated. I think it's much like you. It was like, there was no emotions. Because my dad's autistic as well. So it's like, if you raise your voice, if you cry, he cannot, he will shut down and he will leave the room. So it was a lot of therapy for me to understand the damage that did to me. So I love just the acknowledgement that like at that point in your life, that safety, that nurturing was like what you needed. And I think it's exactly what you needed. As that relationship progressed, because you were together for a really fucking long time. Yeah. And I want to talk about that later in the episode as well, because I honestly get to 5 years and I'm like bored as fuck. And that's a me problem. Like that is a me problem. Yeah. Anyone that's been in a relationship for over 6 years, I'm like, I need to know the answers. But was there a point in that as you evolved or as things changed, did you feel that you settled into it more and more and more? Was there ever anything that was like you wanted a little bit more chaos? Did that ever rear its head?
It wasn't the chaos that I ever wanted, but what I longed for from day one were the same reasons why I left, which is really interesting. And probably one of the hardest things of the whole situation was coming to terms with, but why did I stay for that long when I longed for so much? And that was emotional connection, chemistry, the physical, that inexplainable feeling when you're with your partner that is human connection, like soul connection. And we functioned really well together. We got on really well together. If a problem came our way, we solved it really well together. We agreed on the same things. We wanted to visit the same places. So logistically, we functioned so well as a couple. And I think there is something to be said in that, because there are a lot of couples do last a very long time. And I think that's why that worked. But I'm a year into this relationship now, and I've known the man for sort of 2 years. And we're still at a stage where if he puts his hand on the back of my head whilst we're driving,
I just got goosebumps.
I know, it's a lot. Or like he's very, very affectionate, and he touches me a lot in a really like I melt kind of way. I'm still aware of every time he touches me, because it sounds so dramatic, but I wasn't touched for so long in that way, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, makes so much sense.
And it's really interesting as well, piecing together that if I think about my relationship with my dad growing up, that is also the one thing I did have. He was a very emotional, he was,
yeah, so physically affectionate.
Physically affectionate, yeah. And I think that's quite a cultural thing within Greek Cypriot community as well. My mum's very affectionate as well, but it's not about that. But he was very cuddly. That wasn't a weird thing for our family growing up. So to have that now makes me feel like at home, whereas what I've had and was lacking makes so much sense as to why I was longing for it and almost like craving it, because
you weren't getting it.
Yeah.
And that longing, I mean, it's something that if you haven't lived through it, no one will understand. And in my past relationships, I remember this is not what happened with you, but I remember there's nothing more lonely than like crying yourself to sleep, like in bed next to someone that you love or you're in a relationship with. People don't understand that you can be so lonely even if you're in a partnership.
Yeah.
And what I think is so interesting is that I remember when I found you on Instagram, your partnership, your dogs, everything. I remember that I think I was single at the time, and I was like, I'm never jealous of anyone. It's just a thing about me. I don't get jealous, but I was like, oh, she's got what I want. She's got it.
Yeah. We were picture perfect.
You were picture perfect. Did you feel lonely in that relationship? Was that ever anything that registered consciously? Did the longing make it to your brain? How did it connect or show to the outer world?
Yeah.
Bit of an abstract question, sorry.
No, I totally understand it. I actually say now, because there is a bit of guilt that I have for having always been in a relationship as well. I feel guilty for why did I get that when, some of my friends have been single for 9 years or never had a boyfriend. And I'm like, oh, fucking hell, they're queuing up. Not literally, but there seems to always be the way that my life's gone. And I felt more lonely in that relationship for a period of time. We did have really obviously happy times, of course, but I felt more lonely in that period of time than I ever have done. So in the last 18 months, even though I've been in a relationship for a year of that, I've bought my own house, financially supported myself. I've done everything on my own. I've lived on my own for the first time. And that wasn't a patch on the loneliness I felt in that relationship. So in terms of it connecting to my physical, I guess, existence, it kind of manifested in different ways. And I think that's quite common, isn't it? Because you kind of, deep down, but it takes a while for that deep feeling to come to the surface. And he wasn't a horrible person. So there wasn't there's no red flags or anything like that. We got on so well. I respected him. He respected me, and I still do. And he was meant to be in my life and I was meant to be in his, but there was definitely something that wasn't quite right. And my problem was thinking that the needs that I wanted and needed weren't justifiable because I had so much. We had a 4-bedroom house that we bought together. We had 2 beautiful dogs. We built ourselves to a financial position where if we wanted to go on holiday, we could have gone on holiday. We built that together to a point where what more could you want? So that carried me for a really long time. And I started getting towards the period where, we got engaged in 2018.
And how long had you been together at that point?
So 14, 15, 16, I can't count.
No, me neither.
14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 5 years.
Okay.
We got engaged at 5 years.
Were you talking about it before? Was it always an inevitability that we're going to do this, we're going to spend the rest of our lives together? You were just going on the motorway to the destination?
Yeah, but by society's rule book. Okay, so like, this is my sensible, you've found this man, this is right, now you go, now you're going to do, and then you're going to have children, and then it's going to be perfect, and everything's going to be perfect and meticulously planned and blah, blah, blah. And that was where my headspace was when I was in that relationship. I think 2019, had COVID not happened, I think those feelings had started to come up. And then COVID pushed them back down, because COVID, we reconnected in a different way.
What was that way, if you don't mind me
Probably,
asking?
I think our happiest part of our relationship for me was probably the beginning of COVID. And
increasing quality time, so maybe you felt more emotionally connected with him.
I don't know. It could have been the no distractions, no pressures. I think that just COVID was such a difficult time for everybody involved, but also more so for others than not. And I was very fortunate. Like I said, we lived in this beautiful house. We had beautiful weather for the first 6 months of COVID in the UK. And it was a very sort of selfish time to just kind of be in this bubble of of us, I think. We had the excitement kind of fresh off of the engagement too, I guess. So that year, I guess, saved us. And then as soon as COVID started opening up again, life started coming back in. And that's, I think, when it went from there to the wedding. And then the final thing for me was children. The next phase for us was going to be trying for children. And I remember thinking to myself, I can cope with not having these needs met. But I kept having this vision of like, how am I going to watch my kids not be smothered and hugged and kissed and loved and had conversations with? Like, that would kill me. And that, I think, was the final straw. It's not actually an emotional thing. Yeah, I think that was the final thing for me, where I thought, I can't bring a child into the world in this feeling. And that was it.
It's so interesting you say that, because in my mid-20s, I was in a wildly abusive relationship, but I loved him so much that at the time, if you told me it was abusive, I'd be like, no, it's fucking not. Yeah. And the only reason that I inevitably left is the exact same realization, was the realization that I'm happy to marry you. I want to be with you. It was obviously very toxic and it was a trauma bond, but my children don't deserve this. I couldn't give them their dad. That couldn't be their dad. And obviously this is not comparative in any way. Yeah. But it is so interesting how sometimes we do suppress those internal feelings, that we can hold them down, we can suppress them. But it's not until we really realize that we're about to bring someone else, innocent parties, into it, that maybe we realize there's like a different dynamic that we need to look at. Yeah. I want to ask you, when he got down on one knee, so something I've never experienced, was there any part of you that was like, this is not right? Or in that moment, did you still believe like this is right?
Oh no, in that moment, it was the magical fairy tale that you expected. Good. Yeah. So I think there was such a period of our relationship where we were so happy together, but also where I was so young and convincing myself that this is everything, this is perfect, that I don't think I knew myself then. I don't think I knew myself in the same way that I know myself now. Whereas like, I think if my boyfriend got on one knee right now, I'd be like, fucking stand up right now. Do you know what I mean? But I love him more than I've ever loved, you know, I've never felt a love like this before, but I would literally be like, fucking get up.
What are you doing? Get up.
So it's hard to compare, but definitely in that moment, it was a beautiful moment. And, you know, though that sits in the memories of like, I'm so thankful for that. Yeah, which is such a wonderful thing. And that there's so much guilt attached to walking away from someone who is just a great person and a lovely person and a very kind person and respectful person. There is so much guilt attached to that, which was just so hard to navigate. But, you know, he's happy, and it was without a doubt the most right and best thing that I could have done for myself.
100%.
Especially for the woman that I am now today as well. Yeah.
Because as you tell this story, it's so beautiful. It's just like a clear evolution of you.
Yeah,
and
that's like, exactly how I feel.
It was like, this is exactly what was meant to happen at this part of my life. And it wasn't like for 10 years you ignored the truth, you know? And that's the reason I asked about the down on one knee thing, because I think that there's two different types of people that have gone through this. And the first one is like, they knew before they even got to the engagement, those feelings, they knew, and they tried to dispel them or whatever. And then there's your side of the story, your version, which is that actually in that moment, it was 100% exactly what you wanted. And it's so beautiful to hear that, because I can only imagine how hard it must be to say yes in that moment and have those feelings inside of you. And I want to talk about the guilt, because you had been together for 10 years when... 9.5 years. It's very easy to say like, I'm going to be okay. But did you feel like I'm stealing 10 years of his life by me leaving now? Or because he was male, did you maybe feel like, you know, women have the horrible societal biological clock that just like freaks everyone out and all of that, which men kind of have less? Like, did you feel like you were going to destroy him in the process? Do you feel like it was something like, did you speak about it before it happened? Talk me through what was going on.
Yeah, the guilt came 360. There was guilt in every sort of aspect. But I think I just fundamentally knew at that point that it was the right thing to do. And that's what's so interesting when people say things to me like, but why did you get married then? Like, how come you didn't know? It's like knowing down here and knowing in a way that manifests itself into a physical action of you saying this isn't right are two very different things. And even though I say the reasons why I left were reasons there in the beginning, those reasons there in the beginning were so tiny. And yes, I used to think like, oh, I wish he would, you know, kiss me this certain way or hold my hand like that without me having to ask, or, you know, whatever those things were. The woman that I was at 22 didn't need them as much as she needed them when she was 31. So it's such like a complex situation. But the guilt for his life, I think I felt... it's such a weird thing to say. I knew he would be okay. And I feel like I knew he would meet someone quick. And when we were together, this is like so personal, but when we were together, I did used to say to him, which is so toxic and fucked up, I used to say, if we did split up, you'd find someone else straight away and they would just replace me and it would just be like that. And I think I knew that there was some truth in that. And he did meet someone really quick. Yeah. And, you know, I met someone really quick too, but I do think I knew what was going to happen because I knew him so well. And I also knew that I wasn't right for him. Like, it wasn't just about me. Like, it wasn't wrong what he wasn't giving me. It just wasn't what he wanted to give me, and vice versa. Like, maybe he gives that to his new partner tenfold. I don't know. But yeah, it was mental that I look back and I knew that was going to happen. And I used to say that to him. And that wouldn't have been a nice thing for him to hear.
But when you said that, interesting. Sorry.
No, go.
When you said that to him, how did he react? How did he react?
I think that was probably such a huge part of our relationship breakdown, was we weren't very good at communicating emotions because our emotions operated on a different level. And now I look back and I think, yes, it was fucked up that I said that, but it was more so that I didn't know how to communicate to him how I truly felt, that I would say something like, oh, you'll just meet someone else anyway. Like, you'll be fine. You'll just meet another woman and, you know, that'll be that. I didn't feel special enough that it would be like Sasha Pallari, the love of his life, is what's walked away from him. It just felt like it would have been another woman that had walked away. And although this is why there's like no blame or anything, although I longed for him to do certain things for me and, you know, maybe him vice versa, maybe he does do that for his partner now. Maybe they're a perfect match and they connect on the same frequency and they emotionally like communicate on the same frequency, and that's great for them. And that's why there was no blame involved. But when you get to a stage where it's becoming more and more apparent that the two things aren't lining up, or more than, you know, two things aren't lining up, you are sort of then left with, so why would we stay in this when neither of our needs are getting met in a really fundamental, basic way?
Yeah. And I think what I want to say is, and I don't know the guy, and he went on the most amazing journey with you, but the probability is that he hasn't changed in his next relationship, and that's not on him. It's just, think of, as humans, like, we're doing the work, right? We're in therapy, and even we find it hard to change who we are. Yeah. And I always say to people that, because people ask me all the time, should I get back with my ex? Should I get back with my ex? My answer is always, what are they doing differently now than what they did differently previously? And you have to show up every day doing the work, checking internally, how does that make me feel? Okay, I'm going to try and do this. It feels uncomfortable. I'm going to say something in the moments I was shut down. And so, yeah, hopefully he is happy. And all we just want is for everyone in this world to be happy. But I think you're right. Listening to you, is it sounds like ultimately it was just like a misalignment in what you needed. Yeah. And I think sometimes we say those things when we need a bid for connection. You deserve to be the love of someone's life. You are right now. And yeah, it just makes me like so happy to hear that you've gone on this journey to claim what you truly deserve, because it could have been very easy for you to have children and then the rest of the story would have been very different. And that's not to say you wouldn't have parted ways at some point down the line, but then there would have been kids involved and stuff like that. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, do you think you ever would have parted ways if you guys had had kids? I mean, it's very hypothetical, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we would have. I think our time together was meant to be together. And I don't think now looking back on it, I don't see how we would have progressed further than we did. And it's funny because I used to speak about therapy a lot in our relationship. Like, I think we should go to this. I think we should go to couples therapy, or I think I need to find a therapist and I think you need to find a therapist. And we split up, or, I broke up with him, whatever wording you want to use, after our final couples therapy session. We'd had
So you did go to therapy?
Yeah, we'd had 4 sessions. And it was during that last therapy session where I think that was it then. Once my decision was made, I had to act on it, because then that feeling that was deep, deep down, it had come up and it was here and I couldn't ignore that any longer.
How did it show up when it was up here? Were you
petrified?
You were scared. So it wasn't like you were being mean to him or rude to him. It was really just fear.
Yeah, no. There was never any
anger.
No. And part of that is actually a problem. I'm in a relationship now where the passion is so high that therefore your emotions are so high. So therefore you do have bickers or arguments, or there's
just more passion.
Yeah, there's more fire. And the fire isn't anything to be afraid of. Anger isn't an emotion to be afraid of if it's done and handled in the right way. But I think it's so telling of our breakup and the way the emotions were communicated then. And I'm trying so hard to be very considered. He's not in any form of the public eye, and people are fucking mental. So I want to protect his privacy as best I can. So that, I'm trying to just say as much as I can. But basically the way that it was communicated when we split up is very telling of how our levels were different. It was emotional, but emotional to an extent that we were both capable of sharing in that relationship. But the emotional depth that I longed for and now have far surpasses that, if that makes sense.
Oh, 100%. And so you left, you made that decision. Was there any moment when you thought, I want to go back, I've made the wrong decision?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And every time I felt like that were the times where I felt so unstable and felt like climbing this climb on my own, can't do it. I used to, I still do. It has taken me, I think, a full year to really, really make peace with the confidence of you left because you deserve more, and not deserve more because he's a piece of shit, but deserve more because that's what you deserve. And in the moments that I wanted to go back, they were the moments where I just felt like I couldn't do it on my own. And I used to say, I understand why people stay. I understand why people say, because it's not fucking easy trying to exist as a solo person in this country, under this economy. Having to do everything alone is just such an immense pressure that I wouldn't say underestimated, because when you're following your heart, you're not sat there logistically working out what your electric bill is going to be when you're on your own. It doesn't fucking work like that. But yeah, there were definitely pockets of moments where I was like, it would have been a lot easier if you'd have just stayed. However, the price I would have paid is huge, and I wouldn't turn that back for anything now.
Oh, it's so amazing to hear you speak, because I think what I see so much of in my work is, people always talk about, how do I detach from someone? It's something we talk about a lot. And I always say to people, you're asking the wrong question. It's not how do I detach? It's why am I so attached? Mm-hmm. And I think people with deep attachment wounds, which is so many of us, I'm one of them. I've gone the other way. I'm fucking hyper independent. I don't need anyone. That's the protective cover. But you went the other way, which was that you liked being in relationships. You felt safety in those relationships. A lot of people with that attachment wounding would be so very difficult for them to leave. But I think that over time, the reality really does start to come through. And that's why I love that we said at the beginning, leaving is a process, not a moment. Yeah. And you got there on the process that you were always going to go on.
Yeah. And I think my one piece of advice for anybody going through something like that is to sit through it. You have got to sit through it. And all of those moments where I wanted to run back wasn't because I wanted him back or our love back. It was to do with me and what I needed to sit through to work out for myself.
Rather than running away from.
Yeah. Which was just so hard.
So hard.
And I remember God, there were so many moments where the smallest things would make me break down. When it came to doing fundamental things like I had to fill out a form for something. It was a really complicated like tax form. I was just an absolute mess, like an absolute mess. So it was always really, really tiny things, but they were logistical things that I forced myself to sit through. And now I'm so thankful for that, because I realized that it wasn't what it was, but you have to sit through it and come through it at the other end to look back and realize that.
100%. And your evolution in that period when you were on your own was probably like so intense. Like it happened so fast, it happened so intensely. Whereas the evolution throughout the decade of the relationship probably was slower. And I think we see that in life. Sometimes we learn slower, we evolve slower, and then sometimes life fucking lifes, and it happens so hard and so fast. Yeah. At what point in that I'm single, I'm facing the parts that fucking hurt, I'm sitting with them, I'm not running from them, I'm proud of myself, did you decide, I think I'm ready to date again?
Oh, that didn't happen.
Oh no?
No. So
I'm excited. I don't even know the story. So this is why I was saving it for the pod.
So like you're gonna like get your teeth into this so hard. So I left my marriage in the February, and in the October prior to that, October, November, December, January, 4 months before is where I met my boyfriend that I'm with now. And I hated him.
Shut up.
Yeah, hated him.
Shut up.
So we did, I told you obviously that I went to drama school and musical theatre was my thing. So I did it as a hobby. And this was my first show back after COVID. And I got my like dream part in, do you know musical? Are you into musicals?
I love you.
So we did Rent, the musical,
never watched it.
And I played the lead girl and was cast opposite my now boyfriend, who was the lead guy.
Wait, so do you guys just like sing around the house all the time?
Yeah, it's so embarrassing.
Sing and dance?
It literally is like High School Musical. It's 7:30 in the morning. He's got like a backing track on and he's singing, and I'm just like doing my hair, and I'm like,
no, I'm obsessed.
It's so cringe.
That is
it's so awful,
cute.
But it's also like low key all I ever dreamed of. So
that's love, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so cute.
So when he got cast, I remember going home to my husband, and I reckon he'd probably laugh about this now. And I used to say to him, I was like, I don't know how the fuck I'm going to kiss him on stage. Like, I don't know how I'm going to make this look like we're in love.
Wait, but why did you hate him? Had you met him before that?
No, just like, I just thought he was just an idiot. Like he was a bit inconsistent, and he was really flaky in rehearsals, and just didn't click at all, which is just mental because we're very clicked now. But in that period, like, there was just nothing, like absolutely nothing. But what's so interesting about the whole story is that the parts that we played, it was a toxic love affair, and everybody in the show, it's basically it focuses on a group of sort of young teenagers in New York back in the 80s when HIV was rife. So a lot of them have got AIDS, drug addicts. Like I was a drug addict, he was a drug addict in the play. And
yeah, that would be a turn up if it was in real life.
Oh no, it was.
Okay, cool. That's a good part of the story. Let's go into that. Let's go deep dive.
I told you you're gonna love it. And we basically had to pretend to have a toxic love on stage when there was absolutely no connection in real life. I remember when we had to kiss first time in rehearsals, and I just felt absolutely nothing. And I was a bit nervous about it because obviously at this point in my personal relationship, I was craving like that sort of, you know, touch or someone to kiss or, you know, something like that.
But you were like, not with him.
Absolutely no, thank you. So there was just nothing, but we got loads of compliments in the beginning of rehearsal period, like, oh, your chemistry is really great together on stage. And it was a really weird situation. Anyway, the show happened, the show went. So he was in my life, I knew him. And then
did you start to like him more?
It was show week.
Yeah, it wasn't like you hated him the whole way through.
Yeah, and the hate is such a strong word, isn't it? Like he just irritated the fuck out of me. Like everything he said, I was like, rolled my eyes at, or like,
shut up.
Oh, he's not here again this week because he's feeling poorly. I was like, oh, right, cool, brilliant. I'll just do it on my own, shall I?
I'll just kiss the air.
Yeah. So it got to the stage like within the show where this was my dream role. It meant so much to me, and I was just like, brilliant. Like he's fucking it up for all of us, to the point where I actually asked the director to recast him the week before the show, which would have been a very different story. So after the show finished, by this point we'd built a bit of banter up, we were friends, but you get very like that with everybody in a show. It's a very sort of like intense cliquey love. And as we were becoming friends and we just used to chat on like Facebook Messenger, I remember thinking, fuck, he is so emotionally intelligent. Like his messages were I felt like I was speaking to a therapist for the first time, because obviously I hadn't had therapy really consistently up until this point, and I just loved speaking to him. So I'd say that we became friends. And then he was singing in a band at the time, and we went on this huge cast night out a few weeks sort of I think it was about 4 weeks after the show. And I remember watching him sing and I was like, huh? What? Like, I just felt really attracted to him. And it was a really weird kind of progression, because obviously the person that he was, you know, he had his own story as to why he sort of went on a bit of a discovery, or, you know, he also went for a breakup. And I don't know, that thing happens after a breakup, doesn't it? We just start like glowing differently, whether it's for whatever reasons. Yeah. And then that was it. It became quite intense quite quickly. But for a few months when that intense was sort of going on, and there was a lot of, I need to be single, so can you just wait there in the corner whilst I have a look around and see if there's anything else better out there, because the rule book says that I need to be single for an X amount of time now, so you can't, you know, you're going to have to wait for me. And I knew he was in love. So he was very clear in his attraction to me, and I was...
Oh, so he claimed it from the beginning?
Yeah, I think it was quite obvious. Yeah. And I think I thrived off it. I think I enjoyed it a lot, regardless of how I felt towards him, to have that attention, especially when you know that initial bit after a breakup where you go kind of numb. So those things matter, but, you know, really you're about to hit the tsunami later on down the line. That's the phase I was in, like that glow. Oh my God, I'm single. Like, what the fuck? This is so exciting. But yeah, you just go into this weird sort of like phase. And that's the phase where I think I was thriving off the attention, but also like, you just wait there. And a scenario happened, which I won't go into because it's very private. And in discovering that scenario, it became apparent that he had been hiding a drug addiction, like a real life one, not just a rent in the play one. And when I found out what had
hiding
happened,
it from you or from everyone in
his life.
Wow.
Yeah. And in that moment, we'd now by this point built this connection whereby I cared for him so deeply, and I had so much respect for the way that in the very short period of time he'd made me view certain things. I said to him, obviously romantically, that's it, we're done, but I need to be there for you as a friend, and I need you to know that I'm here for you, because I definitely felt this, not responsibility, but I did feel like the responsibility for the connection we had, that would be needed. And he had helped me so much that I knew in that moment he needed help. So I literally turned up on his doorstep, and there wasn't that connection there in that moment because I'd shut myself off for it. But over the coming weeks, then his vulnerability with coming out in his addiction and doing what he did made me fall in love with him like 10 times harder. And so for the last year, we've navigated this relationship of just the most intense connection I've ever felt, but on a level where like we laugh constantly, we love each other so fiercely and are so communicative about our feelings. And there are so many logistics in the rule book of my previous, years up until this point where he doesn't tick any of the boxes, and this relationship isn't what I would have drawn out for myself in any way, shape or form. But the fundamental feeling is actually all I've ever wanted. So yeah, it's been just the most intense 18 months of my entire life. But I always say this, and I say this to him as well, if he walked out of my life tomorrow, he's taught me more about love than any man ever has in my whole life. And nothing could take that away. So, if I found out he was married to someone or whatever, that still wouldn't be able to take away the love that he's shown me, which is a really special thing that I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, I feel very emotional. It's so powerful. I had that with my ex. It was like the worst heartbreak of my life. But when I healed through it, it was like, you taught me love. Yeah. You held my pain. You taught me partnership, and thank you. Yeah. Wish that man nothing but the best. I hope he lives the best life. And it feels like you've come to life. It feels like this man has taught you being alive in your body and alive in a partnership and alive navigating life together with this aliveness. You have this passion and this spark, and it's so amazing to watch. And I also am interested to know, hopefully it never ends, but we will never know what tomorrow will bring, you or me or anyone listening. Do you feel like you've now built a level of self-resilience through what you've gone through that you will be okay, which maybe at 22 you didn't have?
Oh my God, Jet, you're literally speaking my language. The last week I have been saying this. I said this again in therapy on Monday. The absolute unwavering strength I have built to know that no matter what happens to me, I am going to be okay is solid as a fucking rock. I do know that to my core. And what it's taken for me to get to that place is has been hell, but I'm so thankful because I think so many women don't have the privilege, like the privileges that I've had in order to be in that position. They don't have access to therapy. They don't have a scenario whereby they can take that first step to go on that discovery. Like there's so many different scenarios as to why so many women don't ever get to this stage. And I do believe that it's one of the greatest lessons I've learned and gifts that I have to hold that for myself, because it's an indescribable feeling. It's one of the reasons why I can't fucking bear the social noise around icks and red flags and don't settle babes, and like we're talking about what shoes he's wearing, like don't settle because he's wearing these shoes, like shit like that absolutely enrages me beyond repair. Like I get so angry about it because conversations like this aren't sort of happening enough. Like that's what people are thinking like love is. Do you know what I mean? Like it's such bollocks. Whereas that feeling that I've just described to you, like that's the best form of love. Fuck a man. Like that's what we all want to be finding and searching for. So yeah.
Oh, I'm like, why am I crying? I couldn't agree more. And I want to ask you, if you were using a dating app with the conditions and categories or whatever they're called, like I guess filters that you use on dating apps, would you have met this man?
No.
Me neither.
He wouldn't have like, no, none of them. And that just goes to show how little there is in the terms of resources for women, which is one of the reasons why I love your podcast so much and how you talk about relationships and love. And I think it's the education that so many women need, because if you are sat at home on a dating app setting your height for another person and his fucking wage packet to something like, do you know, in the year we've been together, it's only in the last 4 weeks that he's taken me out for dinner for the first time on a date. And he said, I'm taking you out for dinner and I'm paying for you. But do you know what else has come with that? That man has never missed a week of therapy. So every single week for the last year that he's not been able to take me out for dinner, but that's okay.
Money on therapy.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to cry.
Do you know what I mean? Like that isn't going to come through on a dating app. We've got people like you'd have girls taking the piss out of that on a dating app.
100%.
And I think like I spend every time I'm scrolling down like any sort of dating hole on TikTok, I roll my eyes because I think that's where you're going wrong. Like the standards are set in hell for the wrong reasons. Like, do you know what I mean? I'll take myself out for dinner, or I'll pay for us to go for dinner whilst I can. And then, you know, maybe next year he'll be earning twice the amount I'm earning and maybe he'll take me out for dinner every night. And like, you know what I mean? You just don't know. So in answer, no, there is no way that he would have fit the category.
The only reason I ask is because like the two most transformative loves of my life, this one and the boyfriend before, neither of them I would ever have matched with. Both of them have been short kings, but like my dad is 6'6", so I had that programming that like that it has to be tall, he has to be athletic, and like neither of them would have even come across my radar. But they have changed my life. They have changed my heart. They, you know, my boyfriend is the best person I've ever met, and it's just so good to hear from you as well that like you wouldn't have met this man through a filtered category dating app. But this man has shown you more in 1 year about bringing you to life, about consistency, about investment, about chemistry, about compatibility, about partnership than you ever would have met than the guy that wants to take you to fucking Nobu and wants us both to wear 7 layers of makeup.
Yeah. And I also don't want to...
True,
yeah. Well, no one's ever taken me to Nobu, but yeah, I know, get the vibe.
Well, good story here, because we drove past Nobu yesterday and I said to my boyfriend, oh, I've been to that restaurant once. This is bad actually. I slapped my boyfriend outside of Nobu on Park Lane, and I don't condone violence in any way, shape or form, but he called me a fat whore at the dinner table.
Oh my God.
And it's moments like that we forget. I haven't thought about that memory in 9 years since I was with that guy. I just drove past that Nobu. And so maybe that's why I made that comment, is like, for me, it was like, that guy took me to Nobu, but he called me a fat whore at the dinner table. Whereas this guy, probably doesn't even know what Nobu is.
Yeah, your boyfriend
have it in Mexico.
would like a picnic on the floor and you like put a film on.
Literally, but that's all I want. We went home last night and ate Jaffa cakes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, have you ever eaten a Jaffa cake before? He was like, no, I love this. And I was like, I love you.
Yeah.
Like, this is love for me. And I think probably where we will wrap up here is it's about finding that balance, right? Like I've been in that nurturing love that you had with your long-term partner that we needed because of our father wound. We needed because we just needed it. And then I've also been in the relationship you were in when you were younger. It's more toxic, it's more chaotic. It's about finding that balance where you feel stimulated mentally, emotionally, physically, but you feel safe. And for me, I found the more safety I experience in my partnership, the better the sex is. the more that the chemistry can grow and flourish because you see me and you love me for who I am. And that is so powerful. So do you think you found a balance where you have more things and better balanced?
Yeah, definitely. I think the balance across the board of my life is there. And that's what I think I've worked so hard to find. Like I said to you earlier, yes, this love that I'm experiencing with my boyfriend now is incredible. And, you know, I do hope that it long lasts and is everything that I want it to be. But I would still place the love that I found for myself above that. And I think that's really important. And, you know, this man is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but neither am I. And I think that's another thing that we have to remember when it comes to finding someone. When you're sat there talking about all the things that are wrong with them and you can't date him because of this, X, Y, Z, have you actually looked at like you and not what's wrong with you, but like what you could do to better your life and better what you bring to a relationship? And that is balance in itself, like not just looking for somebody else to walk into your life and like fulfill all of your needs. You've got to fill your own needs and you've got to fulfill your own needs. And also sometimes your friends might fulfill those needs and platonic friendships might do, and your parental love, whatever relationship you have with them. It's balance in every sense of the word, I think.
Yeah, it's that, isn't it? Like there's a big belief today that if I'm just skinnier, richer, prettier, that's one side of it. And the other side of that is if I just fall in love across the board, all of those things, it will be this belief that everything will be okay. Yeah. But none of those things make everything okay.
No.
Things are okay when we start to be able to come home to ourselves and share our truth with another. And we heal through connection and through being seen. And it sounds like this partner has seen you and you have seen him. To hold space for an addiction with love and compassion is the most healing thing you could ever give to someone. So I'm sure that you've already changed his life just by being you. And he's so lucky to have you. You are such a dreamboat.
Thank you.
And just thank you for sharing your story. I think you're going to give a lot of people hope who maybe know that they need to do the thing they don't want to do.
The work is the worst thing ever, but you know what I mean? Yeah.
And just like not ignore those sensations that are coming up, because you can ignore them for as long as you want, but they won't go away. And in my world, as a functional medicine practitioner, over time, they really don't go away. Yeah. They really start to show up physically if you don't express them emotionally. Yeah. So I'm just really proud of you. And I hate saying I'm proud. It feels so cheesy. So it's like, I respect you and I see you and you're inspiring.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining me. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I loved that. Absolutely loved it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming and for being the first person to make me take my shoes off.
Sorry, I came in, I was like, right, shoes off, I need to cross my legs up.
I love it so much. Thank you so much. And we will see you back here on another episode very soon.